this was an Oregon versus Ohio State battle for months and months, really alternating visits, 6 of 7 visits down the stretch in like the last 8 or 9 months or something like that. KDW was either going to Eugene, Oregon or Columbus, Ohio. So it came down to this. Ohio State going back to KDW's visit over there on April 12th. Buckeyes looked like they certainly had the lead at that point. The Ducks got the last visit, and maybe they were looking to make some ground. There were some people, not only in the Oregon community, but maybe some national recruiting people that were starting to lean a little bit for Dixon-Wyatt to maybe commit to Oregon on Sunday. But as we know, he ended up committing to Ohio State. He joins Chris Henry Jr. and a couple others as wide receivers in this recruiting class right now. And here's the deal. When you get into a high-profile wide receiver recruitment with Ohio State and a guy that they really like and a guy that they really want, that is an uphill climb the whole damn way, folks. They're wide receiver U for a reason. It is very difficult. It is a tremendous challenge when you go into this type of wide receiver recruitment against Ohio State. You got to think that Dan Lanning in Oregon certainly knew that going in, and you certainly saw the end result of what happened as well. One thing that certainly popped into my mind is this is another modern-day loss for this Oregon program that had been forming at least a little bit of a pipeline down to Santa Ana, California. Of course, the decommitment of Tomahini Tupoi, he goes over to USC. Cody Green, he goes up over to Washington. And now you have KDW headed across the country over to Ohio State. Now, getting guys from modern day, it's not the be-all and the end-all. Oregon is a national recruiting program. I've said that before when kind of looking at USC's surge this spring, specifically in the state of California. Oregon has proved, like they last year, they got the top player in the state of Alabama. They they got Trey McNutt out of the state of Ohio. You know, they got all these guys from they've gotten really good players from Maryland on the East Coast. They've gotten really good players from Texas. But modern day is they consistently produce 4-star talent, 5-star talent, and you consistently have players like Chris Henry Jr. is a great example, who's from Ohio, started his high school career in Ohio, and a lot of kids transfer into modern day to have the opportunity to play in the Trinity League, to play on that type of big stage. Cody Green, being from the Seattle area, is yet another example of someone not from the Southern California area that certainly goes into there. So you would certainly like to be able to continue that pipeline, but it's not the be-all and end-all. I'll talk about more as the show progresses. Oregon is still sitting in a really good spot right now to land their 3rd consecutive top 5 recruiting class. And now, where does Oregon go at the wide receiver position? Because this was a priority recruitment for the Ducks. This is a guy that they had been recruiting for a very long time. This is someone that they were interested in. But you can kind of understand how the chips kind of fell, how they made Junior Adams really got this recruitment going. And then when you have the wide receiver coach change and Brian Hartline and what they do over at Ohio State and the Chris Henry Jr. connection, you can maybe understand why it went the way of the Buckeyes in the end. But now as we look forward at the wide receiver position for Oregon, look, they're still in a really, really good spot. This is like the furthest thing from a gut punch. This is very different from maybe like the Cody Green flip up to Washington, because not only did Oregon recruit very well with 2 really good guys last year, the number 1 wide receiver, of course, and DeCorian Moore and Cooper Perry, 2 guys that, of course, DeCorian and then Cooper as well, who are a lot of people are certainly talking about in Eugene through spring right now. But then you fast forward to 2026, Gatlin Bear, a former 5-star from the state of Idaho, he's going to be coming off of his Mormon mission. So, okay, when you talk about enrollees in 2025 and you talk an enrollee in 2026, that's back-to-back 5 stars, folks. That's good. That's very good. Okay, so that's the first thing. And then you kind of look at, in terms of high school recruitments and what's going to kind of go, what direction is Oregon kind of go from here? They're sitting in a really good spot right now. Messiah Hampton is a guy that Ross Douglas, We talked about maybe the challenge with Ross Douglas coming in and trying to retain maybe the groundwork that was laid with Junior Adams. Sometimes that change can be difficult in recruitment, but Ross Douglas was already laying the groundwork for Messiah Hampton in New York when he was the wide receivers coach over at Syracuse. Like, that's one that I feel really good about. We've learned throughout this entire recruiting cycle, nothing is a guarantee. A lot of things are very far from guarantees, but I feel really good right now about Messiah Hampton. And if you look at where in the 4 major recruiting services, Messiah, he really leaped forward big time in the last On 300, but he's ranked at least in the ballpark of where KDW is. And then Jalen Lott is another guy out of the state of Texas that they're very, very high on. Like, Lott is rated higher than Dixon-Wyatt according to On3 and ESPN. And only ESPN has Lott outside of the top 100. Rivals has him at number 49, 24/7 has him at 60, and On3 has him sitting there at 91. So if you kind of bring it all back to home plate a little bit, what could these last 2 classes look like? We talked about the 2 guys that were coming in that are currently true freshmen on campus in Eugene. You have a 5-star in Gatlin Bear, and then you could throw in Messiah Hampton, maybe Jalen Lott as well. But at the very least, if you get 2 5-stars in 25 and 26 and 2 4-stars, that's a really good haul. 4 blue chip wide receivers in a 2-year span for a program that continues to take steps up in the type and the profile of player that they're getting at this position. This is a group that is going to be just fine despite falling short on Kayden Dixon-Wyatt.